Today on History's Tech, we are looking at the main armament of the German army during World War II, the Panzer III and Panzer IV. Now, between the two of these tanks, their variants, and production models based on them, nearly 30,000 tanks were made, making it the most produced German armor of World War II. But let's go ahead and look at the history and legacy of the Panzer III and IV. Now, as I talked about in my previous video, the development of the Panzers came about as that transition because of the Treaty of Versailles and the need to get away from World War I style tanks and create an entirely new tank. Now, as I previously discussed, the Germans were trying to get around the development of the tank due to the Treaty of Versailles, and they kind of went through this interesting phase. They developed 4 tanks. I've talked about how the Panzer I was basically to train troops, the Panzer II was a stopgap measure, but the Panzer III and IV were supposed to be the real meat and potatoes, the mainstay of their tank army. Now, as I stated in my previous video, with the development of the German armor, Heinz Guderian really wanted to kind of follow the British example of creating 2 purposes for tanks, very similar to the British's infantry and their cruiser tanks. And so they kind of went along with that idea when they were developing the Panzer IIIs and IVs. And because of this, it's very heavily influenced by other nations. And one major influence on the Panzer III comes from the British Vickers Medium Mark I tank. And this was a 3-man turret tank. And this was not a very popular style of tank being utilized. The French were utilizing single personnel turrets. The Soviets were using 2-man turret crew. So a 3-man turret crew was kind of a different way of approaching tank development. Additionally, the Panzer III kind of went through a weird development stage. The first 4 versions of the Panzer III OS A through D, are basically prototypes. They only built so many of each model, and each one was supposed to be designed to be an improvement on the next one. Problems with it, the OS A had a hand crank turret, making it incredibly slow to rotate a turret. The suspension on the OS B was supposed to be better with a heavier armor. However, that didn't last very long and was utilized as a training unit. The OS C actually was put into action in Poland, but all they did was change the suspension and it really didn't make much improvements. The OS D model basically, again, was sent to Poland and even Norway, but had to be withdrawn. It needed a better turret, better armor. They had to redesign the hull and had to do some improvements to the overall engine and systems like that. Now, with these 4 prototypes out of the way, they finally begin producing what they think is going to be their mass production model, the OS E model. However, again, it's extremely problematic, the design. They basically had to work on the armor. They increased the weight by 2 tons. They redesigned the suspension. They now redid the road wheels on it. They had to increase the power of the engine because of the weight. And with all of these improvements to it, they went ahead and developed another model known as the OS F. Finally, the OS F becomes their production model tank. And this becomes the first one they start producing in large numbers. Now, there's going to be an additional 6 versions of this tank that they're going to produce, producing more than 4,000 tanks as a result of this. Now, the Panzer III was supposed to be Germany's main battle tank of World War II. However, as soon as it met up with German tanks, such as the KV-1 or the T-34, it was inferior in both armor and gunpowder. And so this actually came about as a rather stupid reason. When they developed the Panzer III, they had designed it to be a tank-to-tank combat vehicle. However, because of standardization, they reduced the size of the main gun on the Panzer III so that it would kind of be better interchangeability with infantry units at the time. And so they actually nerfed the ability that the Panzer III had against early tanks. And so they had to immediately go into production of building heavier guns for the Panzer III. And this is the whole reason the OS J variant is produced. And that's the most produced variant of the Panzer III. It served in North Africa. It served on the Eastern Front. It had a better turret, better front armor, better spacing for the armor to allow better maneuverability of the turret. It was produced with a 5-centimeter gun, and that later 5-centimeter gun is going to be known as the OS L, which is going to be one of the other big variants of this. And so we're going to see this heavier and heavier gun placement trying to create a better and better Panzer III. And probably the most common or most famous variant of this is the Sturmgeschütz III or Stug 3. Now, the Stug 3 is the most produced armored tank by the German army, period. They produced it more than any other. And it is one of about a dozen different variants on the Panzer III design. However, the Panzer III wasn't alone. It did have a companion tank that was known as the Panzer IV. And it's a companion in the similar manner to a British cruiser tank is to an infantry tank, similar to what a Panzer III is. And we're going to see kind of a gradual development with it with the first 5 variants of the tank. And the improvements of the tank are very gradual. After the invasion of Poland in 1939, it's decided the Panzer IV is a pretty decent tank. They're going to go ahead and scale up production of it. But after the Battle of France, when it has issues going up against the Matilda I and the Matilda II, it's decided to increase the gun on the Panzer IV to a 2-inch gun. Other improvements are going to include better armor plating in the turret. They're going to basically change some of the ways the engine is set up, change the exhaust system on it, better auxiliary generators on it. They're going to increase the overall weight of the tank, which is going to lead to larger tracks on it, a better modified system for the suspension and sprockets for the wheels. And this is eventually going to lead them to what's known as the OS-F. And the OS-F is going to be the beginning of the complete and total change of the Panzer IV. Now, the OS-F is going to incorporate all of these changes. The better turret, the better gun, better armor protection, that improvements to the engine, suspension, tracks, all of those kind of things. But the plans for the OS-F kind of go out the window due to Operation Barbarossa, when German armors pitted up against the T-34 and the KV-1, and it's realized that as good as the OS-F's weaponry is, it cannot go up against the armor of the T-34 and the KV-1. So they basically have to either completely design a new tank or make a massive change to the OS-F, and this creates the OS-F2. The OS-F2 was basically the OS-F with a new redesigned turret to handle its new larger 3-inch gun. And this really produces the unique look that the Panzer IV is going to be really well known for. And from there, we start to see that push to OS-F2 post-tanks, where we start getting better tanks with better guns. And this becomes the mainstay of the German army because it is the only tank that can defeat the T-34, the KV-1, meaning it is a crucial piece of the German panzer divisions and is necessary because as famous as the Tiger I is, and it is in production by this time, the Tiger I's are not able to be produced enough to make any significant impact. Neither are the Panthers. So the Panzer IV becomes the tank that has to go toe-to-toe with the Soviet army. And the continuous issues between the Panther and the Tiger tanks means that the Panzer IV is going to be the tank that has to be basically put in frontline service. And because of that, it's going to see some of the heaviest losses of all German armor. By the time we get to the end of the war, because they're so numerously put out there, they're the ones being put in the front lines. And the fact that the Allies have really started upgunning their tanks, the Sherman and the Challenger really start to pose a threat to it, it really ends up becoming almost like cannon fodder and just is a main target for most forces. Now, very much like the Panzer III, because of how good the overall chassis and actual tank body was, we're going to see a lot of variants based on the Panzer IV. Now, some of these variants include vehicles like the Flak Panzer, which is as it says, it is a flat gun, basically Panzer variant. We'll steal the Sturmpanzer, the Sturmschutz, the Jagdpanzer, which are all going to be heavy assault guns or tank destroyers. We'll see self-propelled guns. We'll see mobile transport, command tanks, even amphibious submersibles based off of the Panzer IV chassis. Now, because of the sheer number of these tanks produced, they can be found in museums around the world, so you have the opportunity to actually see one of these in person. But there you have it, a quick look at the Panzer III and IV, the main tanks of the German army during World War II. In all honesty, these were pretty good overall tanks. The continuous development of them and the improvements done to them really made them a very valuable tank to the German army. And had the Germans not shifted their focus elsewhere, they really could have given the Allies a run for their money in terms of tanks, at least being able to produce them. Now, obviously, they ran out of materials. The Allies kept having better opportunities to upgrade the materials. So this is not going to be a tank that's going to change the war, as some people may think, but it could have caused the war to last a little bit longer than it did. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to talking to you on the next time.